Chapter 28. Drugs. Have you woken up and learned that the large Wall Street banks launder illegal drug money for the CIA and its partner cartels, as well as profits from large illegal arms sales, and that this constitutes their greatest source of profits? This is a quote by Preston James, Ph.D. William Cooper writes in his book entitled Behold a Pale Horse that the ruling powers had decided that one method of funding black projects was to corner the illegal drugs market. The English and the French had established a historical precedent when they exploited the opium trade in the Far East, and they filled their coffers. Cooper goes on to say that a young member of the CFR was approached. His name was George Bush, who at the time was president and CEO of the offshore division of Zapata Oil, in Texas. They were experimenting with offshore drilling, and it was thought that drugs could be shipped from South America to the offshore platforms by boat to be taken from there via the usual means of transportation. This method meant that no customs or law enforcement would subject the cargo to a search. Bush agreed to help and organize the operation with the help of the CIA. This plan has now expanded worldwide. The CIA now controls most of the world's illegal drug markets. Cooper goes on to say that for many years, the secret government has been importing drugs and selling them to mainly the poor and minority groups. Drug smugglers from all over the world are in contact with the United States secret agencies. These agencies do not want to eradicate narcotics cultivation and trafficking because their importance will be diminished. The people in the U.S. Drug Enforcement Department are encouraging the drug trade so that they could show performance and get millions of dollars worth of budget. General Noriega was made a drug baron by the CIA and, indeed, he was made a scapegoat. This is an excerpt from a statement by Osama bin Laden in September 2001. According to Jim Mars, conspiracy researchers have long suspected that the disparity between cannabis arrests and those for cocaine and heroin can be explained by allegations that the harder drugs cannot be easily produced at home and so are imported by people working within the U.S. government to fund off-the-books operations. In February 2015, Paul Joseph Watson and Alexander Light reported that there was overwhelming evidence that the CIA has been smuggling drugs for decades. They reported that the logistical coordinator for a top Mexican drug trafficking gang, responsible for purchasing the CIA torture jet that crashed with 4 tons of cocaine on board in 2007, had been working as a U.S. government asset for years. This information was given to the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois in Chicago. Jesus Vicente Zambada Niebla is the son of El Mayo Zambada Garcia, one of the top kingpins of the Sinaloa drug trafficking organization. Niebla was arrested in Mexico in 2009 before being extradited to the U.S. to stand trial in February 2014. The indictment claims that he helped to oversee an operation that imported into the U.S. multi-ton quantities of cocaine, using various means including Boeing 747s, private aircraft, buses, rail, cars, tractor-trailers and automobiles. He claimed that he was working on behalf and with the authority of the U.S. Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Agency, FBI, Homeland Security and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement since January 2004. At the time, the head of the D, Judge Robert Bonner, accused the CIA of being drug smugglers and said that a ton of cocaine was smuggled into the United States by the Venezuelan National Guard, in cooperation with the CIA. Undercover D agent Michael Levine had been co-opted by the CIA in Southeast Asia and testified that for more than 30 years, the federal government had protected some drug dealers. During the Nixon administration, He said that he was about to bust a major heroin source and said, "I was stopped because that source were our allies in the Vietnam War." He said that this incident was not isolated and happened many times in his 25-year career. In 1998, the CIA Inspector General testified that there had existed a secret agreement between the CIA and the Justice Department so that during the years of 1982 and 1995, the CIA did not have to report drug trafficking by its assets to the Justice Department. Levine commented that to a trained DEA agent this literally means that the CIA had been granted license to obstruct justice in our so-called war on drugs, a license that lasted, so the CIA claims, from 1982 to 1995. The bloodlines run the global drug trade and so put their own people in the key positions of drug policy and enforcement to make sure that they are never caught. Only the small fry are caught in the competition. This is a quote by David Icke from The Perception Deception. Another issue is the production of drugs in Afghanistan under the surveillance of both US and British troops. J. McCall Thomas Hayes, in his book entitled The Rise of the New World Order, writes that when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, they destroyed the country's opium crops, which hindered the CIA's income for black ops. In 2000, the Taliban's drug eradication program led to a 94% decline in opium cultivation. According to the UN, opium production in 2001 had fallen to 185 tons. Following the October 2001 invasion, production increased dramatically, regaining its historical levels. Under the guise of protecting Afghan values, poppy fields opium, the Afghan drug trafficking trade is estimated to be $50 billion a year. General Mammat Ghariev, a former Russian commander during their operations in Afghanistan, said that the United States will not stop the production of drugs there because it covers the cost of their invasion. 90% of drugs from Afghanistan goes to former Soviet republics. 80% of the world's drugs are produced in Afghanistan. They've outdone the South American countries, such as Colombia. I don't make anything up. Americans themselves admit that drugs are often transported out of Afghanistan on American planes. Drug trafficking in Afghanistan brings them about $50 billion each year, which fully covers the expenses tied to keeping their troops there. They don't have any planned action to eliminate the Mujahideen. Consider what is required to extract an ounce of gold from the deep earth and know the same amount of pure heroin, which is derived from opium, which grows as a weed in Asian and South American fields, is worth tenfold the precious ore in the marketplace. Those countries that are heavily indebted to the Western nations must repay their high-interest loans, and where do you imagine that revenue will come? This is a quote by Patricia Corey. According to an anonymous source, the Bush family dominates the drug-dealing wing of the CIA. James Casbold was a former MI6 agent, was a drug runner for them, working on operations in both London and Brighton between 1995 and 1999. He worked with his father, also an MI6 agent, but his father was involved in higher-level drug trafficking, including the CIA and Mafia in Rome in 1992 to bring cocaine and heroin into the UK. Casbold says that his father owned a truck company in Malaga in southern Spain, which was a front for an MI6 cannabis trafficking operation. Speedboats came from Morocco to the Costa del Sol with cannabis, which was then put on the lorries with fruit hiding the cannabis. He said that they were allowed to keep a small amount of the drug to sell on. In the mid-1990s we met an IRA contact in South London where my father was given 4 kilos of cocaine. We delivered it to another location in North London. Casbold goes on to say that MI6 and the CIA have cornered the global drugs trade and are bringing the majority of the street drugs such as cannabis, cocaine and heroin into both Britain and America. The money is used to feed the octopus. The octopus is intelligence language for the global underground base system, which is mainly run by the NSA. There are 4,000 bases around the world that have been built and funded purely by drug money. Have you learned that the secret shadow government has built 140 deep underground military bases that are connected by high-speed maglev trains? This is a quote by Preston James, Ph.D. The global drugs trade run by MI6 and the CIA with help from organized crime is worth at least £500 billion a year, which is more than the global oil trade. One of Casboult's contacts was involved in the war and the infamous CIA trafficking ops at the Mena, Arkansas airport. He had photos of bricks of cocaine and heroin being taken off of FedEx planes. The same people who are involved in the octopus are controlling most of the mainstream media. The Bank of England is a major British intelligence drug money laundering bank. Author J. Michael Thomas Hayes writes in his book entitled Rise of the New World Order that one of the CIA's main objectives upon inception was the trafficking of narcotics into the United States in order to alter societal values, which continues to this day. He believes that narcotics trafficking is a staple of Illuminati operations and has been since the Opium Wars of the mid-1800s. He believes that there are two purposes to this: firstly, to attack societal systems through the mass ingestion of mind-altering substances by citizens and the side effects; secondly, to fund CIA black ops that are off the record.